Hey guys, so this is part 2 to my Kylo and Rey theories and predictions for episode 9. Something I really hope they explain in episode 9 is what the prophecy is. We all know how it was believed that Anakin was the chosen one and he was the chosen one to bring balance to the Force. It wasn't until I rewatched the prequels again that I caught that the Jedi, Yoda, Mace Windu, that they didn't know exactly what the prophecy meant. In interviews, Mark Hamill was talking about how Luke believed that Kylo was the chosen one. He didn't explicitly say that in the movie, but in the interviews, Mark Hamill said that. And back in 2014, right before the release of Force Awakens, because Force Awakens came out in 2015, there was a bunch of promos on Disney XD. Promos were for Star Wars Rebels because that was the year that Star Wars Rebels was coming out, but they talked about character profiles, and one of them they talked about Anakin. And in the profile of Anakin, they talked about how Anakin was the chosen one. So they haven't thrown away the chosen one storyline. And in The Last Jedi, Rey said that Ben was their last hope, which gives me hope for Kylo to come back to the light side. But anyways, so I wonder if the chosen one thing is through the bloodline. I definitely think Rey is a huge part, a huge key player of bringing balance back to the Force. So with all of this, logically, to me, it seems like it's supposed to be Kylo and Rey bringing balance to the Force. They said that episode 9 was really going to tie a lot back to the prequels, which they have done that in this new trilogy. In Force Awakens, Maz mentioned the Sith, and Kylo talked about a clone army, and then in The Last Jedi, there was mentions of how Luke, when he was talking about Palpatine taking over and how it was all under the Jedi's noses. And there's a lot of story parallels from the prequels in The Last Jedi. In the novel Bloodline by Claudia Gray, which is a canon novel, Ben does not know that Vader is his grandfather until it is revealed in front of the Senate. It gets exposed in front of the Senate that Leia is Darth Vader's daughter. And in the book, Han and Leia have kept Darth Vader being Ben's grandfather a secret. They didn't tell him because they were afraid that he'd go the dark side, which was really bad parenting on their part, because if he would have learned how Vader was bad but was able to come back to the light side, maybe a lot of these problems could be fixable. Like, hey, maybe it's not too late for me to come back to the light side. Bloodline takes about 6 years before Force Awakens. And in Bloodline, after it gets revealed that Leia is Darth Vader's daughter, she tries to contact Ben and Luke, but she gets no answer back. And obviously at that point, Luke's new Jedi Order has been destroyed. So if Ben didn't find out until Bloodline that Darth Vader was his grandfather, how much does he actually really know about Anakin? And Snoke isn't going to tell him the truth or the whole truth. They're Sith Lords. Palpatine wasn't exactly truthful with Anakin. So it makes me think that Kylo doesn't know the real reason why Anakin went to the dark side. The real reason why Anakin fully went to the dark side was because he was afraid of losing Padme. So I highly doubt that he knows that Anakin went to the dark side because of a woman, because of love. So I hope that is brought up in episode 9, and it would be really interesting to see what his reaction would be to the truth, what Kylo's reaction would be. I feel like if Kylo knew the truth, that it probably would change his mind, change the way he was thinking about the dark side and his grandfather's, quote, dark side legacy. And maybe if it was like, oh, my grandfather lost the woman he loved and had this awful life, maybe I shouldn't lose the woman I love. It would be really interesting if Kylo finding out the real truth with Anakin and Padme and how Anakin went to the dark side, if that made him go towards the light side. In the book Bloodline, Leia and Luke, they know that Padme is their mother. They know that she was their mother. And Leia is very inspired by her biological mother, by Padme. She knows about how Padme tried to stand up against Palpatine. So if Ben didn't know the truth about Darth Vader being his grandfather, I would assume that he didn't know about Padme being his grandmother, because he would have just assumed that Bail Organa and Leia's adopted mother were his grandparents. And it was only Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Bail Organa that knew about Luke and Leia, knew about Anakin and Padme. In the Clone Wars, it is hinted that maybe Ahsoka suspects that there is something going on between Padme and Anakin, but it's never directly addressed. So nobody else knew about Anakin and Padme. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru knew later, but nobody else knew. I also think it would be really cool and interesting if Kylo is able to speak to Anakin. There's a lot of ways they could do this. Even if Hayden Christensen didn't want to come back, they could do this in different ways. They could even have a scene where Kylo is able to see the past, because Yoda talks about the Force can allow you to see the past, the future, the present. I think the reasons that Kylo hasn't been able to talk to Anakin is because, one, when he's trying to talk to him, he is talking to Darth Vader. He's like talking to Darth Vader's helmet. So he's talking to Darth Vader. He's really not trying to talk to his grandfather. Not trying to talk to Anakin. He's not using the light side of the Force. I also don't know how often Force ghosts show up. I don't think you can just like call them and they'll just appear. And if Kylo was just able to talk to Anakin, there would be no story. So I think it would be really cool if they tied in the story of Anakin and Padme. And that would be really interesting too, because it's very similar to Kylo and Rey. So I want to talk about some things that possibly could happen. I definitely think that Hux is going to try to kill Kylo again, because in The Last Jedi, he was going to, and then Kylo woke up. He is definitely going to betray Kylo. I think Hux is going to figure out that it was Kylo who killed Snoke, because Hux already looked suspicious in The Last Jedi. So I think at some point Kylo is going to be on the run from the First Order. I think that's a really highly likely chance of that happening. There is also a possibility that Kylo is going to get captured by the Resistance, and the Resistance is going to try and kill him, or maybe they'll beat him up really bad or something. And the reason why I think this is because there's been a lot of moments in Star Wars Rebels, and they mentioned this in Rogue One, where Rebels acted very radical. There's a character named Saw Gerrera who was a radical rebel, and he would do things that would cause innocents to be in harm's way to try to crush the Empire. This character appeared in Star Wars The Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and he was in Rogue One. In Star Wars Rebels, Mon Mothma says that they are not going to treat their prisoners, the Empire, the Imperial prisoners, they're not going to treat them like how Saw would, and they're not going to win the war how Saw would. So the reason why I bring up Saw is because there have been extremist rebels. There have been radical rebels that were over the top. In Star Wars Rebels, and they showed this a little bit in Rogue One, rebels have even disagreed with each other. They have disagreed on how to handle things with the Empire. I felt like the storylines of Poe and the Resistance were very similar to the storylines in Star Wars Rebels and Rogue One with people disagreeing with each other within the Rebel Alliance. So it makes me think that in episode 9, there might be people in the Resistance who are going to be radical. And it makes me think that maybe some members in the Resistance are going to take things too far. Maybe they're going to take things too far with the First Order or against Kylo. It makes me wonder if Rey is going to be like, we're acting no differently than the First Order. I wonder if there's going to be a point in the movie where Rey is going to be like, Kylo needs to stand trial. I wonder if they are going to do a scene that was similar in The Revenge of the Sith when Anakin was saying that Palpatine needed to stand trial and Mace Windu wanted to kill Palpatine. I think this would be an interesting direction because they already kind of teased with that idea in The Last Jedi. There was a lot of talk about how what is good, what is bad. A lot of the lines were kind of crossed, they were blurred. A lot of the actors said in interviews that it wasn't exactly clear of who was good, who was bad, who was the quote bad guy, who was the quote good guy. We've seen the Resistance turn on each other. We saw that in The Last Jedi. We saw how quick they were to turn on each other. We saw how they disagreed with each other. We saw how rash Poe was. So to see this idea be taken further into episode 9 would be really interesting. And we all know that the Resistance is going to win. We know they're going to defeat the First Order. But it would be really interesting to see how are they going to handle beating them. I think something is going to happen where Kylo's going to have to make the choice to save Rey. Like, maybe if he doesn't choose to go towards the light side, Rey will die. And this could be vice versa too. Rey could have to make a choice to save Kylo. So I want to talk about the scene with Rey and Kylo in The Last Jedi. I want to talk about the scene where they get separated when they are trying to grab the lightsaber. So firstly, I felt like it was symbolic that Kylo and Rey were separated again, just like how they were separated in The Force Awakens. This is also the second time where Rey could have killed Kylo. Rey woke up before Kylo, and she could have killed him while he was laying there. So both times, Rey could have killed him, but she didn't. I think that when Anakin's lightsaber broke, it represented her and Ben, the two broken halves, and I also think it represented how Ben is still conflicted between the light side and the dark side. I also think that the lightsaber broke because both Kylo and Rey, in my opinion, were wrong. There were things that they were both right about. Obviously, Kylo, should have wanted to kill the Resistance. But there were things that I felt like both characters were actually right about. So I think the lightsaber broke because they're both wrong. Because in Force Awakens, it was Rey's destiny to get the lightsaber. And the lightsaber broke in The Last Jedi. So I was under the impression that it wasn't Rey's destiny to have Anakin's lightsaber anymore. Now, I have a theory that she's going to get Obi-Wan's lightsaber, but that's for another video. So I want to talk about the video game Star Wars Battlefront 2. The dialogue between Kylo and Rey is very interesting in Star Wars Battlefront 2. During gameplay, characters will interact with different characters. It's not the same dialogue. So when I was playing the game, one of the things that Kylo says to Rey that I thought was interesting is he says, "I can save you." He, of course, doesn't say that with any of the other characters. So I feel like that is some sort of clue for episode 9. I think he is going to save Rey. I think he's going to want to save Rey. The fact he says to Rey, "I can save you," that's not like "I want to kill you" dialogue. And his other dialogue with her is not aggressive. With everybody else, it's aggressive, but it's not with Rey. So I think the whole "I can save you" statement is some kind of indicator to something that is going to happen in episode 9. I feel like it means something. So I want to talk about the scene with Kylo and Rey in the elevator where they are talking about the futures that they saw. If you watched my one Kylo and Rey video, I talked about this and I talked about a theory I had involving the scene, but I have a different theory that I wanted to share. Maybe Rey will temporarily go to the dark side and Ben will go to the light side, and he will be the one that has to pull her back from the dark side. This has actually been done before in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. In Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Bastila is a strong Jedi. She falls in love with Revan. Revan was once a Sith Lord. Bastila gets captured. She falls to the dark side temporarily, and it is Revan who calls her back to the light side, is able to pull her from the dark side and bring her back to the light side. Revan and Bastila's story is very similar to Kylo and Rey's. Revan and Bastila share a powerful Force bond. Bastila was hesitant to trusting Revan because he once was a Sith Lord, but she falls in love with him. I wonder when Kylo was saying, "I saw something too," if that was Rey temporarily falling to the dark side and he's on the light side at that point and he's able to call her back, bring her back to the light side. I think that could be a possibility because Bastila and Revan's story is so similar to Kylo and Rey's, and there was an interview about how Kylo and Rey both had light and dark in them. I don't think Rey would be permanently on the dark side, and I never have thought that she was going to because she's our heroine, but she could temporarily fall to the dark side or kind of be going towards that, and I think it would be a cool direction to see that it's Kylo that is like, hey, don't go to the dark side of the Force. So what have we not seen be done in a live action Star Wars movie? We've seen Vader redeem himself at the very end and die. So we've seen the redeemed villain, and then we have seen just plain villains die. So I think what would be really original if they had somebody who redeemed himself, Kylo, and lived. It would be really interesting to see how somebody would come back from the dark side and living and starting a new life and having to live with their mistakes. Knights of the Old Republic, Revan redeems himself. He marries Bastila. I'm hoping that we get this kind of story with Kylo and Rey. One of the reasons why I loved The Last Jedi is because they used so many storylines and plot lines and themes from other Star Wars stories, other Star Wars mediums, and brought it to the big screen. So I'm hoping they continue that with Episode 9. Also, Vader died as an old man. I do not want Kylo to die as a young man. I don't want him to die in general, but Vader, you know, like, what else was he gonna do? He kind of had to die. Kylo is young. Darth Vader was able to redeem himself and seek forgiveness and be with Luke, but he really didn't have a whole life to live. Kylo still has a life to live. He's young. I feel like if Kylo dies, First Order is defeated, Rey trains the new generation of Jedi, it will just be like the same storyline with Luke. Pablo Hidalgo said that Kylo was not the new Vader, that he was much of a protagonist as Rey, so I'm hoping that means for a happy ending for Kylo and Rey. The Return of the Jedi ended on a happy note. It had a happy ending, so I'm hoping that Episode 9 has a happy ending with Kylo and Rey. So something that I really want to happen that's kind of like my fangirl wish is that I think it'd be really cool if Rey and Kylo had twins. In the Star Wars Expanded Universe before the new trilogy, Han and Leia had twins. I think it would be a really cool twist if the Solo twins were the twins from Rey and Kylo. I think it would be a nice twist too, because Kylo and Rey are so much like Anakin and Padme, and it would be cool if Kylo and Rey had twins because Anakin and Padme had twins, Luke and Leia. I'd be happy even if they just had a kid. I basically want them to have beautiful Force babies. But I think it would be so interesting to have a character who was born from the light and the dark. That would be one powerful Force baby. In the book Bloodline, Leia jokes of Han about Han being a grandfather, so I'm hoping that is some sort of sign. Hope that's some kind of foreshadowing for some Force babies. So I want to talk about the scene with Kylo and Luke on Krayt. Kylo's whole thing against the Resistance is completely personal. Hates the Resistance because his mom is heavily involved with the Resistance. His whole thing of Luke was completely out of hurt, anger, rejection. I watched the fight scene of Luke. What I got out of it was a person who was very hurt, very angry, and just reacting out of anger from their hurt. I also kind of chuckled when I watched this scene to myself because it was very much like being at a family Thanksgiving. Like when family members are fighting and it's, you know what you did all those years ago. Kylo said to Luke, "What, are you here to forgive me? Are you here to save my soul?" That was just like how you fight with your family members or like your parents. I also want to believe that Kylo can come back from the dark side because Luke said in that scene, "See you around, kid." I also want to have hope because the scene with Luke and Kylo was so similar to the scene with Obi-Wan and Anakin. I got so excited in the theater when Luke said, "I have failed you, Ben. I'm sorry." It was just like when Obi-Wan says, "I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you." Anakin was very angry and emotional during his fight with Obi-Wan, just like how Kylo was with Luke. Anakin was still bad during that fight with Obi-Wan, and he was able to redeem himself. So just because Kylo in this fight with Luke didn't redeem himself yet, I still think that there is a chance for Kylo to come back from the dark side. I thought The Last Jedi had so many parallels with Revenge of the Sith and The Return of the Jedi. To me, I thought it was kind of like a mashup of the two movies. I loved how they tied that all together. And going back to Kylo feeling rejected, that rejection theme also goes with Rey because he felt like Rey had rejected him. Well, "I'll destroy her" nonsense was only because he felt rejected by Rey. I mean, he basically gave her a space proposal. I mean, it was like, "Be my queen." Will admit that Rey is a lot better than me because I would have been, "Yeah, I'll be your empress." Especially after the shirtless scene, which when I saw that for the first time, my instant thought went to that SNL skit where he said Kylo Ren is shredded and he has an 8-pack. If you have not seen the SNL skit, you need to see it because it is hilarious. So moving past Kylo being shirtless, so there was an interview where Adam Driver was talking about Kylo Ren, and he was asked, this is before The Last Jedi, and he was asked if Kylo Ren was going to live, if Kylo was going to make it in The Last Jedi. And Adam Driver said, "Well, it depends on your definition of living." Which Kylo survived, but he's not really living. He's not living a life. He's all alone. He lost Space Wifey. So that makes me believe that he is going to be miserable without Rey. I think it's easy to forget that the whole story of Star Wars is because of a relationship. The whole galaxy was affected because of one relationship, Anakin and Padme's. So it would be cool to see how a relationship affects the galaxy, but in a positive way. It would be such a nice switch if a relationship changed the galaxy for the better, unlike Anakin and Padme's changed the galaxy for the worst. Mark Hamill had said that Star Wars is complete escapism, that it's not at all realistic, so, which it isn't. Running around with lightsabers is not anything like life. But, so, with that being said, I am hoping that we get a happy ending. I think the world deserves some escapism. I hope it's uplifting and encouraging and not just like, yeah, kids, everything sucks. Please help me, J.J. Abrams. You are my only hope. Please give us a happy ending. If you guys enjoyed my video, please give it a big thumbs up. Please like it and please subscribe. If you have any theories, predictions, dreams, hopes, wishes, concerns about Kylo and Rey, please let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. In the meantime, I'm going to try to stay optimistic, but I'm also trying to mentally prepare myself so I'm not emotionally crushed when I see the movie if it ends in a depressing way. Also, on a side note, I really like the fact that they made the dark side tempting, like that they made Kylo a temptation, because all of the other Star Wars movies, the Sith have yellow eyes, saggy skin, rotten teeth, and when they're like, join me, you're, ooh, why would you want to join that? So I really like the fact that they made the dark side tempting. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye! And remember, may the Force be with you.